As you probably suspect, I'm Zig Ziglar. Now, before we invite the live audience to participate in this presentation, I'd like to share some thoughts that are critical to your success in closing the sale. Number one, selling is a transference of feeling. If I can make you feel about my product like I feel about my product, if there's any way on earth you are going to buy my product. Now, Willie Dorsey, the great spiritual singer, puts it this way: brother, if you're going to be convincing, then you've got to be convinced. In other words, you transfer that feeling to others that your product, goods, or services are good. Now, there's a myth that's an absolute fallacy, and that is that a good salesperson can sell anybody anything. That's a con artist. A good salesperson, a professional, one who wants to build a career instead of just making a sale, clearly understands that you've got to have a conviction that what you're selling is in the best interest of that person who's buying. That way you render a service. That's what selling really is all about. Second point I'd like to make is simply this: prospects don't change their mind. Now, I know what many of you are thinking, but in reality, they make a new decision based on the new information which you give them. That's the reason the professional salesperson has a storehouse of additional information, because when the prospect says no, they're really saying no based on what they K-N-O-W. Now, you let them know more, and good closing involves education, then they're going to be knowing more and consequently buying more. Number three, the kind of person you are is critically important. A Harvard study recently reveals this: that the people who gain the most usable information from a presentation such as this one take good notes. That's number one. And number two, when it's over, they get with an associate or their boss or their trainer or their manager, and they brainstorm. So as you watch and listen, ask yourself these questions: how can I adapt and use this material old Zig's sharing with me in my career so that I can sell more today and be able to sell more tomorrow to the same people? Now, I'll tell you what, let's do. Let's go to that live audience. Totally convinced that our major need in America today is leadership in the home. Goodness alive. All right. Okay. Thank you. Well, my goodness. Thank you very much. Okay. Sometimes when people stand up on me before I get started, I'm afraid they're about to leave me, so I'm glad to see you sit down. Now, I'm going to be asking questions as we go along. The first three closes involve selling you on what you do. Now, selling, and so I call this one the persuasion close. As I ask you these questions, some of them are kind of simple, but please do me a favor and respond to them. How many of you sell a pretty good product? Can I see your hands, please? All right. How many of you sell a extraordinarily good product? Can I see your hand? How many of you, ladies and gentlemen, sell a product that serves or solves a problem? Can I see your hand? How many of you believe that when you sell a product that solves a problem, you deserve a profit? How many of you believe that to sell two products that solve two problems, you deserve two profits? Can I see your hand? Okay. In other words, you believe that when you render a service, you deserve to be paid for it. Is that what you're saying? And what you're saying is, the more people I help, the more problems I solve, the more profit I deserve. Isn't that really what you're saying there? Okay, now I don't want to put words in your mouth because that's not sanitary. But that really is what you're selling or saying, all right? Now, how many of you have been selling for as long as a year? Can I see your hand? All right. How many of you still got all of the money that you've earned in the last 12 months? Can I see your hands? Okay? Let me ask you a question. How many of you got clients or customers whom you sold a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, or 10 years ago that are still using and enjoying the benefits of what you sold to them all those years ago? Can I see your hand? Now, the next question is the critical one. How many of you believe that the customer was the biggest winner in the transaction? All right, then if that is the case, is the sales process something you do to somebody, or is it something you do for somebody? Now, when you understand that, you're in position to begin to close the sale. Now, let me tell you what I just did. I just did something that is extremely important in selling. You know, a lot of times we convince people that our product, goods, or services are the best, but we don't persuade them to take action. How do you persuade? Well, let's go back in history and look at a couple of gentlemen named Aristotle and Galileo. Aristotle was a brilliant man, but he came up with a very foolish concept. He believed that if you dropped two weights of different sizes but made out of the same material, that they would fall at different rates of speed. That's what they taught at the University of Pisa for years and years and years. And then a young whippersnapper named Galileo came along, and he said, that's crazy. The students and professors said, why, you're off your rocker. Why, Aristotle said, and he said, well, let's go to the top of the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and let's take a look and see. He took two different sized objects of the same material, he dropped them, and they obviously fell at exactly the same rate of speed. He had convinced them beyond any doubt that what he was saying was absolutely right. But he did not persuade them to take action. Now, what am I getting at? How do you persuade people? You don't persuade people by telling them. You persuade them by asking them. You see, had I started by saying that you as salespeople really render a service, you would say, yeah, but I do okay too. Hey, you do all right, and that's fine. That's part of the equation. That's the reason I went through that little routine about how many of you sell a pretty good product. That is so important. You see, that sales process is something you do for someone. It is not something you do to someone. So I'd like to tie that in selling you on you to another attitude close, because you're the most important part of this equation. For a couple of years, I fought in the ring. One of the things and incidentally, I had a pretty good record. As a matter of fact, the worst I ever finished was second.